The following program is produced by Londonderry residents. The views and opinions expressed are not necessarily the views and opinions of the LACTV staff or its volunteers, and should not be considered an endorsement by CTV 20 or its staff and volunteers.
Good morning, Londonderry. This is our third in a series of Concord conversations that we're going to be bringing to the citizens of Londonderry over the next, couple years. Today, we've got with us our two freshman legislators that were elected last November. What we're going to do is allow them some time to introduce themselves, tell you what committees they're on, and then we can get into discussion of some of the things that have gone through their committee and maybe just other general discussion issues. In the future, we have already been talking to some presidential candidates. We'll be getting some of the town people in and some of the state people in, and I'm sure we'll have our two freshmen back at a future date also. With that, I'd like to introduce Kristine Perez, and it's all yours, Kristine.
Thank you. Thank you. I have to start off by saying it really was truly an honor to be elected by the citizens of Londonderry and to serve at the State House. It's a lot of work. I have a newfound respect for those who have been there a lot of years, and a newfound respect also for other freshmen. I mean, we went so far as we had a woman who had a 3-month-old baby with her every day. So it's a lot of work, and devoting the time was a real learning experience for me. Fortunately, I had many fellow legislators who were there to support and guide me, and you really do need support and guidance. It's very important because it's a new world. I was a nurse for 42 years. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother. But serving in the legislature is an entirely different ballgame. I was very privileged to be part of a training group, as well as Ron was. We met every Thursday morning since January, and we were all freshmen in the group, and the class was called the Lions. And it was an incredible learning tool designed to make us more effective legislators. And we actually I spoke in the well several times, and I don't know, had I not been part of this group, would I would have had the confidence to do that. We focused on a lot of the protocols and etiquette and speaking skills, which was huge. Now we are moving on, and our group is actually writing bills to put before the legislator in January. I served on the Judiciary Committee. I'll get more into that a little bit more later. Being an almost equally balanced House, the art of listening and compromise became very valuable. I served with a lot of lawyers. When they did too many legal terms, I'd turn around and give them medical terms just to put it into perspective that I needed to understand what they were saying. I also received many, many emails, both personal on my personal email and my legislative emails from the Londonderry residents. It was great to get those emails, and my feeling is that if you the citizens were taking time to email me or call me or write me, that it was my obligation to at least listen. I want to say a special thank you to Speaker Packard, because I don't think anyone out there realizes the challenge that he has had this year and last year, and keeping balance in that House was an incredible thing. And but that's about it about me.
On?
All right. I also want to concur with Kristine. It's an honor to serve you, Londonderry. I'm one of the few that's a state rep for you and also a town councilor for you. So I'd be happy to discuss town issues today if you'd like to also. But I work a full-time job, so it's another challenge that I have. A lot of other reps don't. So I work in retail management, asset protection field. I have a wife, Cara, who is my rock. She allows me to do the things that I do, so I appreciate her every day. We have 2 dogs, and you've probably seen my bulldog in a lot of different ads. He's my campaign partner. I am on Resources, Recreation, and Development. My committee deals with water quality, PFAS issues, lakes, state parks. One of the biggest issues my committee had this year was the speed limit on Winnipesaukee. We got 702 emails as a committee, all against the speed limit. We had to have our session in the chamber because there was so many people that wanted to come out and testify. But it was just interesting to see that much passion against something. So that was new to me. So that was something that I found very interesting. And as a committee, we decided 20-0 that it wasn't gonna happen. We also in our committee deal with a lot of PFAS issues, which is Londonderry is dealing with. And one of the good things that came out of the budget was Londonderry was awarded $9.7 million to bring a water line from the Merrimack River through Litchfield to Londonderry. So we are working on that. Some budget issues that I think was a highlight for us is we passed the budget on a voice vote.
Yeah.
Then it came back to us after the Senate reviewed it, and we passed it bipartisanly, overwhelmingly. So for me to be a part of that was great. As the speaker had said, it doesn't usually happen. So it was very nice to be a part of that. Very nice to see bipartisanship on the floor come together and get a budget for New Hampshire, the budget that was balanced and had no new taxes. Another thing that came out that was really good this year was we had universal license reciprocity. So now if you move here from Massachusetts or from California or from another state and you're licensed, your license now will come into New Hampshire through reciprocity. So you don't have to worry about all the different hurdles you used to have to overcome to become that license again here in New Hampshire. And I just want to say again, it's been an honor. Thank you for inviting me on the show today. And that's who I am.
Well, I think that, I'm glad you brought that up, Ron. And you, Kristine, you being a nurse, know of the problems that we're having in the state of New Hampshire with the nursing shortage. Just in Rockingham County alone, in our nursing home, we're down 125 nurses that we have to bring in temporary help and everything. So we're hoping that one particular bill will help increase our ability to attract more nurses to come to New Hampshire, because almost every healthcare facility in the state, regardless of what it is having a problem getting nurses there. So that's one of the bills that we passed that's extremely important. Kristine?
Yes, they also, along that lines, this group that Ron and I have been involved in, we're also looking at legislation. And one of the legislations that we're looking at is we have military who serve as corpsmen, who serve as dental assistants, who serve in a lot of fields in the military that could easily come across to civilian life, and it's a challenge for them to be converted over to civilian working, perhaps as an EMT or as a dental assistant. And so one of the things that this Lions group, and I think it's particularly your group,
Yep.
right? Ron's group is looking at is to seeing if that could be made easier too, for them to be able to transfer that work experience into licensure here in New Hampshire. So I think there's the bill being passed and other things being looked at. There's really a big push to try to help New Hampshire with all of its shortages in all forms of medical fields. So
I just want to make one clarification. The group that Kristine and Ron was part of, the gentleman that did it is a former representative, and he calls it his Lions Group. It is not affiliated in any way whatsoever with the Lions
Right.
International or the Londonderry Lions Club.
right. But we do have a lion's pin now. We
You
had a
do,
graduation, and we do have a lion's
Just
pin.
didn't want the citizens to think that it was part of the Londonderry Lions, when
Right.
it wasn't.
Right.
So Kristine, you're sitting on judiciary. I know your committee gets into a lot of controversial issues.
Very.
What have a couple that have gone on this year?
Well, we had the fetal protection legislation. The Fetal Protection Act was passed, before I became a legislator. And we had multiple bills that came before us to change it in many ways. Fortunately, I think, because we were able to keep it exactly the way it was, and I think that's what the citizens want. We didn't make it harder, we didn't make it easier, we were able to keep it the way it was. And I think in the environment where we are so closely matched, that was the right thing to do.
Were there a lot of 10 to 10 votes, split votes on your committee? No
There were
recommendations?
a lot of 10 to 10 votes. We also had multiple retained bills in our committee.
It sounds familiar, my committee too.
Yes, a lot of 10 to 10. But there's also, the art of negotiation is something that you all know very well. I only know it from being a parent and a grandparent or a wife. But
That can be more difficult than legislation.
it could be. But the art of negotiation that went on before we even walked in to sit down, there was a lot of negotiation going on, and I think that's the way it had to be. And that it worked. It worked. Some of the other bills that we had, we did a lot of landlord and tenant bills. A lot of landlord and tenant bills, and there was a lot of back and forth on that. We have actually one that we are has been retained that we're going to work on. There were some school issues, but different than like the education committee had to deal with, that were compromises as well. And we had many that were just we recommend ITL because it wasn't the time to kill the bill. It wasn't the time to try to make any big changes right now. So you can be very passionate about something, but you have to learn to, and everybody knows I can be passionate about things. You have to step back and realize, one of the nicest compliments I got from my fellow freshman rep is that I've mellowed. and you have to, because you just can't get things your way. I did find, though, that there were bills that I felt very strongly one way, but when I received so much input from people that I really had to think long and hard about, I need to represent them, and my opinion on some things were changed. So, but we did have controversial bills, but again, the art of a lot of things just didn't go very far. So, for the good or for the bad. So.
Well, legislative process is meant to be difficult so that bad laws don't get passed too easily. Unfortunately, sometimes good laws don't get passed too easily either.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I have to say, though, the chair of my committee was a former Supreme Court justice here in the state, and he was incredible for educating me on how the law works at that level, and why this can't be done or that can't be done. And coming from a nursing background, it was new to me. It was new to me. So, but I learned a lot, and I felt I was effective. I felt on some things, my nursing background, I was able to be effective as well, and it was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, having Judge Lynn as chairman of Judiciary Committee, was a blessing. Very few states probably ever have the opportunity to have, where we have mandatory retirement at 70 years of old for our judges. Representative Lynn wasn't ready to throw in the towel, and so he ran for representative in his second term, and he's been a tremendous benefit to the state of New Hampshire.
And he was a great judge, too. I had the privilege of appearing before him when I was doing fraud work for the state. And he was tough, but he was fair, and he was always right on, so.
Yeah, yeah, and he's, you know, and I see him all over the place now. I see him at the gym, different places.
He's
so.
very unassuming, considering he's worked for
Very.
the DEA, he's been a federal agent, he's been in Superior Court as well as the Supreme Court, and very distinguished legal career, and he's so unassuming.
He is.
When he first got elected to the House, we were freshmen together last term, and I didn't know really how to address him. I walked up to him during freshman orientation. I said, "Is it okay if I call you Bob?" He said, "Of course it is." Very unassuming.
Yes, he is. He is. And that's another thing, learning the protocol of, I mean, everybody calls you Representative Perez, and I always go, it's Kristine, and those that are, the staff of the State House is another.
Fantastic, yeah.
They are incredible. And they say, no, you're Representative Perez. And I have to respect that because that's what they have to do. And I have a bad habit of, when I am in the State House, of calling Speaker Packard Sherm. And I'm trying to break myself of that there.
The Speaker's been in politics for 33 years, or actually more than that, and he's probably been called worse, right?
But
Not that he should have been, but.
the bills, the landlord bills brought a lot of people out, landlord and tenant bills. There was a lot of, it's amazing, the people that come to speak to. That's another thing. I had watched many hearings. I had actually spoken at a couple of hearings prior to being a legislator, but people are very passionate about things, and they come out, so.
Landlord-tenant bills have been before the legislature as long as I've been in, I think.
Yeah, they
You
said
know?
a lot of these were over and over and
Yeah.
over again, so.
Yeah, they do a lot.
Yeah.
I think every committee gets these certain hot button bills. I know, the speed limit bill on Winnipesaukee was certainly one. I got a lot of those emails too, even though I'm not on that committee. And you're mentioning, a number of the bills that came before, the transgender bills, gender reassignment bills, and we retained 2 of them, and those are going to a subcommittee we'll be working on this fall. And I got so many emails. We had to have our hearing in Representatives Hall, and there was a lot of intensity during the testifying on both sides, especially those who felt that the transgender, House Bill 619 was going to be restricting and denying people the opportunity to get what they felt was, critical surgery. And I got some very passionate telephone messages about it also. So every committee has their really important bills. One of the things that I think we've all heard, and I know the Speaker has brought out, and others have brought out during legislative orientation, what is it, Mr. Speaker, like 2/3 or 80%, 90% of the bills are nonpartisan in the House?
About 85% of the bills we believe are pretty much nonpartisan.
But the ones that are partisan really stand out.
The ones that are partisan always are the ones that you hear about.
Right.
Whether it be about, an abortion or something of that nature. And, I got to remind the citizens of Londonderry again, our bill on abortion means it is completely open up until 24 weeks. It's only in the 3rd trimester that we have a ban on abortion. For the first 6 months, there is absolutely no ban on abortion. So when you see articles, whether they be an ad in the newspaper or whether they be something on TV or on the radio that says we banned abortion in New Hampshire, that's a complete outright lie. The only thing that is banned in New Hampshire is after 24 weeks, and there's a lot of much more democratic liberal states that have a ban that's earlier than ours. So when you hear something that New Hampshire banned abortion, it's an outright lie.
May I speak to that too? One of the other things that people don't realize is you can have a medical procedure in the last 3 months. So the medical procedure is if for the life of the mother or a fatal fetal anomaly. So it's not as though every option is taken away from you in the last 3 months. If the life of the mother or a fatal fetal anomaly, you can have a medical procedure done to terminate the pregnancy.
Another thing you mentioned, Wayne, is you mentioned the number of bills, that we have. It was interesting for me that we start off with around 1,000 bills, and how many actually make it to the governor's desk.
Oh, so
That's what was interesting to me.
quite a
is-
winnowing process.
Yeah, how many bills get retained,
Tabled.
yeah, get tabled.
And the retained bills may ultimately
Right.
make it through, but they've got that extra hurdle of subcommittees, and they have to wait till next January to be considered. So.
Right. So just the number of bills that we deal with at the start of the session was interesting. How many we actually get signed by the governor at the end was interesting too. The whole
As high as
process.
it was actually lower than normal.
Yeah, it was actually lower than normal this year.
Yeah.
I think we had, once everything was said and done, we had around 675 House bills, and the Senate, I think, had 275
Yeah.
Senate bills, something like that. So the number, I want to get to you in a minute, Ron, to talk about some water issues.
Oh, that's
But maybe, so that, the citizens understand, and I know we've said this before, we're about one of the, I think, only one or two states in the country that every single bill that's introduced in the state of New Hampshire has to have a hearing, a public hearing. In many states, that's not the issue. And in every single bill, regardless of how it comes out of committee, goes to the floor for a vote. So occasionally, you'll see a committee vote of inexpedient to legislate or ought to pass overturned on the House floor. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen occasionally, and that's because every single bill has to go to the floor for a vote. So why don't you, Ron, being on resources,
Yeah.
I know this is an issue that I've been, trying to stay involved in as much as possible and help, is the water issue. And I know Londonderry we're one of the worst communities in the state for the contamination of water from PFAS, and I think a lot of it has to do with the, obviously, St. Cobain. And the one thing I learned a couple of years ago is a lot of times you hear about, chemicals being dumped into the water, and that contaminates the stream or the river or the ocean. But from my understanding is that the contamination that we're getting from St. Cobain is airborne.
Yep.
So the stuff that's coming out of the factory
Stacks,
down
yep.
there is airborne. It just spreads all over, a 50-mile radius or something like this. And so you were talking about the 9.5 million that we got. So why don't you just elaborate on that a little bit, Ron, because that is probably
Sure.
one of the biggest issues in Londonderry.
So the 9.7 million was Senator Carson put a bill together in the Senate. I co-sponsored it, and in the budget, the town was awarded 9.7 million. So now that brings our water from the Merrimack River to Litchfield. So now we have to find new ways or new resources to bring it the rest of the way. So one of the challenges that we have as a town councilor and as a state rep is trying to figure out how to balance the tax rate, is trying to figure out how we can get everybody water without devastating our tax rate.
Okay.
So we've got some resources now from the state. We've got another $2 million coming in from another resource. We have other avenues that we're developing to bring more resources to the state, from the state to the town. But a lot of people are also concerned in the town about a water bill. So we also have to think about issues that once we do bring water to Londonderry, are we going to hook people up? Are they going to have to pay to hook themselves up? Are we going to allow people not to hook up if they don't want to? Other issues that we have is, for example, my family, we've been on public water, we've been on bottled water since 2019. St. Cobain has been paying for that, and they kind of been dragging their feet. The whole legal process of getting a whole home water system in our house has been an ongoing battle. At the beginning of the year, they had told us that it was going to be completed by the end of the year. That is now not the case. We're going to go now into 2024. So far, Londonderry residents have not seen the issue expedited on St. Cobain's part, I don't believe. I think it's been they're kind of dragging their feet. So I would like to see, as a state legislator, a little more pressure put on them, as a town councilor, a little more pressure put on them to not drag their feet to help our residents, because we have a lot of people that are affected. Even the ones that are outside the consent decree, even though they're eligible for a rebate program up to $5,000, they're still affected by this. And we need to find a plan to help all of the residents of Londonderry with water. So I think it's a process, and I don't think our taxpayers should have to fund that entire bill. So that's one thing that we're talking about right now, is how can we bring this to Londonderry through a stage, maybe a 10-year process, to bring water to Londonderry so that all our residents have clean water. Everybody deserves to have clean water and drink clean water. So it's a very big passion of mine, and I will do everything I possibly can to help us get there.
I say I've been involved in this, Ron, too, for in the last 3 years, and it's a tremendous process. And if I'm correct, I think to hook everybody up in Londonderry and fix everybody up in Londonderry, I think the tab is something like $200 million.
Yep.
Somewhere in that
That's
vicinity.
in today's
so
dollars.
that everybody knows just
Yeah.
what kind of a massive infrastructure project that's ahead of us. And you know, so it is, and I know that I worked with you know, former Senator Morse on you know, when he was on the commission. He and I worked to try and get as much we could for Londonderry, but it's a problem that encompasses like a 50-mile radius of
Yep.
St. Gomain if you draw a circle.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of other cities and cities and towns that are affected by this. And so I mean, I think the total bill is somewhere up in the $600-700 million if everybody was to be affected. And so that's the problem that we're facing is where all this money is going to come from. A lot of it came from ARPA and CARES money,
Yep.
you know, and so it isn't like we've let this go, but we're just one of many that has this problem. Well, we've got about a minute and 38 seconds left. Kristine, have you got one last statement?
Yeah, again, I'd like to thank the people of Londonderry because I'm passionate about it. I was passionate about being a nurse for 42 years. This is my passion to try to make things good, better, and to work with the legislative process to do what is necessary. And I've already had two residents reach out that bills that they want put in, which I will put in for them. So please reach out if you have some questions. Thank you again.
Ron?
I would also like to thank you for electing me. I work for you every day. I am affected by it myself as far as the water goes. Anything that happens with the tax rate, I'm personally affected also. I live here. So I am very vested in getting us clean water and keeping the tax rate low. So thank you again for having me on the show today.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate it. And you know, continued success with the show. It's very good.
Yeah.
Wayne?
Well, you know, to echo the comments of others, you know, again, Wayne MacDonald, representative, it's our second term now, with the privilege of chairing the Health and Human Services and Elderly Affairs Committee in the House. It's been a great honor to these past 2 terms. I've enjoyed serving. You know, I want to compliment House leadership on passing an incredible budget that addresses a whole range of issues, not the least of which is eliminating the interest and dividends tax. And we've cut other taxes over the course of the last few years, and we're going to continue along this vein. And again, just a privilege, and I'm very honored to be representing Londonderry.
Thank you.
Once again, the show has gone as quick, very quickly, and now it's over. And I just want to thank everybody for watching. We do this for you, the citizens of Londonderry, to try and keep you as informed as possible. And we'll be doing another one probably in the next couple of weeks or so. And we're not sure who our next guest will be. We're trying to get Senator Carson to come in, you know, as our guest also. And I will certainly have our freshman back at some point also. With that, thank you, Londonderry. Thank you for keeping me up there for 17 terms. And this is Concord Conversations, and we'll see you next time.
And enjoy your summer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
preceding program was produced by Londonderry residents. The views and opinions expressed are not necessarily the views and opinions of the LACTV staff or its volunteers and should not be considered an endorsement by CTV 20 or its staff and volunteers.